All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day. It's a little after 11 here for me, but I guess we've got people from all over the place calling in, including Laura, who's on vacation. So how lucky am I? So I took some time to look through the responses that we got, and it's almost comical that no matter where I'm presenting, the statistics are almost identical. 75% of the businesses do not have any kind of a plan in place. 25% do, but I would submit to you that of those 25%, probably 5% actually know what it means and know what to do about it. So my background is strategic communications. I've been doing strategic communications in one form or another for over 25 years. Through that, I accidentally got involved in crisis management. My first introduction to that was a murder-suicide that happened in the middle of the day at a pediatrician's office. And I was contacted from the owner who was in Taiwan, and it was a hostage situation, and I picked up the phone, and it was on. So that was my baptism through fire introduction to crisis management, and I just was a natural at it. I just loved the ability to help save a business during such tragic, times, and so I just never looked back. Since then, I've been just so passionate about helping businesses prepare for a crisis, because it's the OSHA website says that the average violence in the workplace incident costs, or any kind of a accident, in the workplace, the average is $800,000 to a business. And I don't know about you, but I can't afford that. So my goal is to try to help businesses prepare so that we can get through the crisis as efficiently and affordably as possible, and then to come out the other side stronger and actually build your business. And an example of that would be, again, the pediatrician's office. I don't know how many of you have children, but those of you who do, how many of you would be comfortable taking your children back to a pediatrician office when there was a murder-suicide that had occurred there? And I know I wouldn't have. So my goal was, or my challenge and opportunity was to figure out, how do I get the patients and the parents to feel comfortable enough to come back on top of everything else. And in fact, we did. And he's now, the practice has grown. He just had his best year ever. And so it is possible. So I guess I give you that message just as a message of hope that even in the worst situation, you can get through it, either through planning in advance, which most people don't, or having a crisis manager that steps in and helps navigate your way through. Either way helps, but preparation is the best. So that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a lot to cover, so I'm gonna try to go through as much as I can. So I did take note of the questions that you asked, and I thought I'm going to go through what is a crisis plan, why do you need one, and give you some examples of some business crises that are common, and try to help get you going in planning and creating a plan for yourself. And then we can do question and answer along the way. It's fine. If you want, I can kind of get through this and give you sort of a synopsis of it, and then we can answer questions at the end. I'm happy to stay on longer. That's up to Laura. But anyways, let me dive into this. So let's just define what a crisis is to start. And a crisis is a situation that's going to threaten the integrity or reputation of your company. And it's usually brought on by an adverse or negative media attention. And these situations can be any kind of legal, dispute, theft, accident, fire, flood, man-made disaster, or anything that could be attributed to your company. It can also be a situation where in the eyes of the media or the general public, your company didn't react to one of those above situations in an appropriate manner. So the definition of this is obviously not all-encompassing. but it's just to give you an idea of the types of situations where you may need to follow this plan. And if handled correctly, the damage can be minimized. So one thing to remember that's crucial in a crisis is to tell it all, tell it fast, and tell the truth. And if you do this, you've done all you can to minimize the situation, and your chances of coming out the other side are very good. So also, crisis happens to every brand. It's not just business to business. It could be business to customer. It could be nonprofit. So there's no exceptions, and they can take place anytime, anywhere, online or offline. So what is a crisis communications plan, and why is it needed? The crisis plan is designed to help your company protect the safety and well-being of your employees, your customers, and your stakeholders, as well as the reputation of your company and your brand. So your plan is going to establish a framework for responsive and accurate communication with stakeholders, and your stakeholders are going to be your employees, the community, the media, vendors, suppliers, investors, etc. Some brands get through a crisis better than others. United Airlines, not so much. So we want to study their mistakes, and also people who did it right, follow their lead. So how do you plan to manage crisis communications? It starts with HR, and this is something that a lot of the CEOs don't pay enough attention to, but your HR manager is paramount to crisis preparation. And that's because your crisis communication plan is going to be part of your hiring packet. So when they fill out all their paperwork, they're given a copy of the crisis plan, which includes who should and who should not be speaking to the media, and they are going to sign that they've received it, and it goes into their employee files. And it really helps begin to control the message from the very beginning. So what's in a plan? Well, the crisis plan has three parts. It's the pre-crisis, the mid-crisis, and the post-crisis. And all three of these are going to be essential to developing your effective and successful communications plan. Your common crisis communication strategies are going to be set up in a worksheet format, and then you break them down by scenario. So pre-crisis, you can't control how or when the crisis is going to happen, but you can control the response. So you're going to want to be proactive and develop a plan while there are no fires to put out. So let me just go over a few examples of some business crises. There's victim crises, which are, for example, natural disasters, rumors, workplace violence, product tampering. Then there's accident crises, which would be stakeholder claim that organization is operating in an inappropriate manner, technical error accidents, equipment technology failure that cause industrial accident, technical error product harm, equipment or technology failure that cause a product to be defective or potentially harmful. And then the preventable crises, which would be like human error accident, which would be industrial accident caused by human error product harm, product is defective or potentially harmful because of human error, and organizational misdeed. And that would be like management actions that put stakeholder at risk and or violate the law. So obviously that's not everything, but just to give you an example of some of the more common crises. So I want to ask the question, can there be such a thing as a good crisis? And I actually, if anybody can answer that, or can anybody think of something that would be a good crisis? Okay, I'll tell you what would be a good crisis example would be if you have a product that winds up on the top 10 favorite things for Oprah Winfrey's Christmas list, and all of a sudden your phone starts ringing off the hook. You know, are you prepared to manage the disruption in your business? And so I guess I would ask you, if today you needed to communicate or wanted to communicate something fantastic that happened, are you able to do that? And that means not only your current customers, but your future customers, the people that are going to be wanting to, that you want to buy your products. And so if your answer is no, then today is going to be really good for you, because you're going to be able to implement some excellent public relation practices that will help you tell your story expediently, which is key to growing your business. this is I guess a form of, well, it is marketing your business that people often forget about. And there is no greater marketing tool than PR. So how do you begin to prepare? What you're going to do is you're going to conduct a vulnerability audit. And it's hard to prepare for what you don't know, so you start by brainstorming everything that can go wrong. You need to first understand the universe of possibilities in order to know what to plan for. So you're going to conduct the audit, you're going to determine the risk level of each scenario and then the escalation point. And you identify what's preventable, and then you take steps to avoid those situations. Pick your battles wisely. Not every negative review, tweet, or failed press conference is a crisis. So which ones are? Well, sit down with your team and categorize scenarios as issues or crises. So an issue can cause waves, but it has no long-term impact on a brand. A crisis can permanently damage your brand and potentially lead to profit loss. You need to understand the difference, and that will lead you to a stronger plan and a better allocation of resources when a crisis does occur. So know who your audiences are and how to reach them. Internal and external audiences exist. So if you had to communicate an urgent message on behalf of your business today, how fast could you do it? And do you have the communications infrastructure in place? So what does that mean? Your communication infrastructure is going to be something like your email marketing system, which could be MailChimp or Constant Contact, that contains all of the email addresses of your stakeholders. And your stakeholders can be your employees, your vendors, your chair, your board of directors, anybody who would need to be communicated with in the event that something occurs. It's very easy and readily available to have the text messaging resources, systems in place. So if you have any kind of an emergency, active shooter, violence in the workplace, whatever, a message can go out instantly to everybody, letting them know, stay away, or, whatever the message is. Your website can be updated. You have a landing page that's hidden, and it has an update information that's a holding statement, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's ready to go. All you have to do is make it active, and it gives people information about what's occurring. Your social media can be updated as well. We don't have a long time today, so I can't really get into a lot of details, but you're not always going to want to go and update everybody if, when a crisis occurs, if it doesn't call for it. An example of that would be if somebody in your organization gets accused of child pornography. That's not something you're going to want to blast out to the whole world, right? So sometimes, every crisis, you're going to have to stop and take into consideration who needs to know and when they need to know. Do you have a media list? So if you have good news to send out, or you need to communicate something bad, do you have a media list? Are you able to even get in touch with your local reporters? You should have them teed up in your email marketing list as well, or at least have some phone numbers of your basic, your top 10 media outlets that you can contact. Do you know the phone numbers of your coworkers? I know I don't. I have everything saved in my phone, so I don't know the numbers. Well, we need to have a hard copy of the way to contact your key staff members 24/7, and that's something you keep in your wallet that's printed out. You need to have an ability to gather off-site to continue operations of your business, and that would vary depending upon what kind of business you have. But for the communications perspective, you need to have redundancy and have an ability to continue to operate and communicate at an outside location.
So, Holly, why wouldn't just your contacts in your phone be fine? Why do you have to have that hard copy?
Just what if something happens? What if you don't? What if I don't know? What if the network goes down? It's just a good idea to have redundancy in place.
All right, I'm assuming that I'm off site and there's an emergency and that I need to call my partner or one of my employees, and I just pick up my phone and call them.
Well,
I don't have to be at my network. I don't have to be sitting at my desk to do that.
If you have the phone numbers, you can do that. What if your network has been breached and it's not secure?
Then
if
that
phones
information
are
is still in my phone, in my contacts.
Okay, well, it's just something that we suggest.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to identify a key spokesperson. So your spokesperson is not generally the crisis manager. Your spokesperson is hopefully your CEO, would be most of you guys on the phone. But you need to identify the person with the right skills. Some people are really great on social media, or they can speak well to a crowd, but they'll freeze in a one-on-one interview with the media. So pick your spokesperson and have them go through media training. We do that with all of our clients, and it's very helpful. Holding statements. You want to prepare holding statements, and what those are basically just what it says. It's going to buy you some time, but it's also going to let everybody know that you're in a leadership position and you are aware of and controlling the situation. Important thing to note here is that your crisis manager and your business attorney work in tandem. So this is something that we're having to kind of break the stereotype that attorneys say don't talk, and your crisis manager is going to say you have to talk. So having attorneys and crisis managers work together is somewhat of a newer thing, but it's critical. I have attorneys review all of our statements before they go out. Even if I'm positive that it's safe, we still have them reviewed because I know that I don't know what I don't know, and what I don't know is what's gonna hurt. So that's important. So you prepare your holding statements for a variety of emergencies that can be used when a crisis strikes. And the goal is to be able to communicate within 15 minutes of a crisis striking. So if you have a holding statement ready to go, you just tailor it to the specific situation, and boom, out it goes. And again, it depends upon what the crisis is, whether or not you need to be communicating. But generally speaking, most of the time you will. And holding statements are part of any crisis plan, but they're especially important with your social media because you need to be able to respond quickly no matter the time of day. And the holding statement is almost always the first step in a crisis communication situation. So preparing those responses during the planning phase is really important.
Huh? Yeah, myself. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go on. All right, so with the strategy, you'll only need to tweak your statement when a crisis hits. Okay, so your holding statements are going to be short and to the point. You're going to state that the company is aware of the issue and you're looking into it, and then you'll provide another update at a specific time, and then you just make sure you do it. Okay, so you're going to want to train your team, and you're going to want to do it often. So you're going to be training for both social and traditional media crises because each platform has different nuances, and it's good to brush up on your skills regularly. The media training teaches you to be prepared and to be ready to respond in a way that optimizes the response of your stakeholders, and that's part of the reason why we really suggest it. Crisis simulation, this is part of your plan as well, and simulations are like fire drills, and you're gonna find the gaps in your plan, the areas where you're weak, and then you'll be able to bridge those gaps. You're going to want to keep a pulse on public sentiment, so you can use social media monitoring tools. You can set up Google alerts. You keep an eye on your analytics and other metrics to find out, how much traffic is coming to your website, et cetera. Because the numbers can, also indicate to you something's about to bubble to the surface before it actually does. Cyber terrorism is paramount, and just to give you an idea, cyber threat statistics, 90% of U.S. organizations report that they had malware, worm, or a virus attack in 2016. So it's happening to everyone. We work with cybersecurity professionals that are kind of like smart traffic cops for data. With their artificial intelligence, they can detect abnormal traffic, and the breaches can be seen and stopped in real time. It's very cool. Along with your holding statement, you're going to want to develop talking points in advance, and you need to be sure to avoid jargon, be transparent, and keep your brand values at the core. and you stick to your message. You don't deviate or ramble. Less is more. Stick to the 10,000-foot level. The details may seem important to you, but they're not to the reporter, not now. So now we're mid-crisis in your planning. Mid-crisis, the most important rule is don't panic. You need to move quickly, but you don't have to respond in the next 3 seconds. So you step away from your desktop or your mobile phone, you collect your thoughts, you revisit the plan and your prepared responses. Does your plan include your internal audiences? Many plans don't address employees and internal stakeholders. Your internal audiences are important ambassadors for the crisis management efforts as well as corporate social responsibility programs. If your employees and partners aren't informed early on of the crisis and the leadership strategies being executed to navigate your brand through the crisis, it's going to lead to an internal unraveling that further diminishes your brand. It's going to hurt employee morale. So you always start with your internal communications. And I would also add to that, avoid putting things in writing. Meet in person, talk on the phone. The only things that should be put in writing are the approved holding statements and messaging that have been created by your crisis manager, which is either in-house or external, and your attorney, approved by your attorney. When the time comes to respond, you want to have a checklist, and that's going to be your guidepost. So you immediately stop all marketing and promotions and begin monitoring everything. You're going to want to start where the fire is happening. If the crisis is happening on Twitter, for example, you're going to focus on Twitter. You could link to a published statement there and then share messages elsewhere. You need to respond even if the facts aren't known. The lack of communication allows others to shape your story, and then it makes your brand seem disengaged, uncaring, like you're unprepared. And silence in the face of a developing crisis is not your friend. So it's define or be defined. You want to steal the thunder and shape your narrative. You be the one to dictate what the story is around the crisis. You're going to want to provide a place to vent. So if you can, control where that communications happens. People do need to vent, but you need to be able to monitor the conversation and respond. So if it's happening online, you want to take it offline by encouraging them to call your business directly, set up a hotline. You're going to want to monitor your social media 24/7. So we do that for our clients so they don't have to worry unless we tell them to. Use plain English. You're after credibility, normal, everyday speech. That's what's credible. Corporate speak is not. Adapt your existing communications, okay? You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time a crisis happens. Just use your holding statements and you customize them for the situation at hand. Add other responses. Example, if Instagram or Snapchat is appropriate, you would use those. Periscope on Twitter allows you to actually do video as well as Facebook Live now. Messages need to be tailored for the audience and the platform, though, to have the greatest effect. Keep your message simple. You should have at most 3 main messages. Okay, your team already knows categorically what type of information your stakeholders are looking for. So what should those stakeholders know about this crisis? Keep that in mind and keep it simple. The simpler the message is, the better. It's less likely to be misunderstood and more likely to gain a public groundswell of support. And then you want to integrate that message across all channels. So the implementation ought to change according to the platform, but the message itself should align with the brand narrative. Again, take the crisis offline. Traditional modes of communication are still available and valuable. So if a press conference or interview is the best and fastest way to resolve a crisis, then do it. Monitor your impact. Messaging should not be left to its own devices during a crisis. So you're going to monitor and measure its impact. Which messages resonate, which ones cause additional complaints. Increase one, decrease the other, and then test other channels and platforms as necessary. By studying the nuances of stakeholder reaction, companies can refine a message strategy in real time. And this leads us to the post-crisis. Your post-crisis practices are just as important as the ones that happen before and during a crisis. They keep you on alert. They identify what did and did not work. And it's going to lead you to informed best practices and increased community engagement and loyalty. And follow words with action. So words by themselves read as damage control, and I think we all recognize that when we see that in the media. but a good deed or change in operations done in private doesn't do any good for the brand recovery when the crisis is public. The words and deeds go hand in hand, so share them both and share them often. So after a crisis would be a good time to invest in community outreach if you haven't already done that. You would look for a worthy cause that's synergistic to your business and has a logical connection, and tell your story through philanthropy. Get some earned media, which is when reporters write your story for you. After you've gone through what you've gone through, a negative, scary time, it's nice to have the reporters write something good about you and your business. Review your metrics. PR is data-driven business, so let the numbers tell your story, not your gut feelings. So use them when reporting outcomes to your stakeholders, and use them to inform updates to your crisis plan and your overarching PR program. Regularly review the response plan. So your crisis plan is only beneficial when it's treated as a fluid document that's actively maintained, frequently reviewed, and rehearsed. So you're going to do continuous benchmarking, and it's essential to stay on top of the industry for best practices and new strategies. You've got to practice. And then identify your strengths and weaknesses of your communication plan after a crisis to prepare for the next one. And then share the updated plan. So your revised plan is only of benefit when it's actually shared. And companies do need to keep updated digital copy on the company intranet and provide a hard copy to all communication personnel. The digital version is of no use if the internet fails or other technology issues arise. So you overcome your PR crisis with preparation and planning. Communication crises can happen to anyone, even you. So fortunately, you can prepare for them. Create your plan, identify key personnel, write a script that can be used for a variety of situations, know where your audiences are and the best ways to reach them. Use all your communication tools at your disposal to prevent, manage, and recover from a crisis. When you do, your brand won't just survive a crisis, it'll thrive. So with that, I can turn to your specific questions that you sent in the pre-event survey. I'll just jump into the first one.
Sure. Great.
Could you give advice on the topic of riots, demonstrations, flash mobs, etc.? It seems these days there are events that trigger these kinds of social disturbances, and although they have been limited to very large cities, I wonder if these events are becoming a normal part of citizen behavior. How does a business owner, employer react to this kind of situation? Is there an example protocol that's used? So I made a couple notes to share with you. Obviously, everything that we just discussed, it all still applies, but with regards to a riot, let's say a peaceful riot, one of the most important things is that you're going to offer and request respect. So you're going to express support for their right to state their opinions, in accordance with the First Amendment and in a lawful manner. And you're going to ask that they respect your organization's right to continue to do business. So your message could be, if a reporter contacts you and asks you about the disruption of your business or what you think about the riots, you could say, in general, we respect the right to peaceful assembly, and our focus remains on the safety and security of our team members, customers, and the general public. What's important here is you're going to let the police deal with access issues. Organizations should not send out staff to try to drag away the protesters. You don't want to try to manage it with your own security because then you get blamed. So you just want to make sure you communicate clearly to your employees. You draw up an access plan that allows employees safe, that keeps them safe, and then you inform them about it in specific terms. So you let them know there's nothing more important to the organization than their welfare. And in the emergency, your spokesperson is going to have a dual role. They're going to be offering messages both to the public, and then they're acting as the eyes and ears of the company for the executives. So even if your statement in this is just we're looking into this, people need to know that you are involved, that you're aware, and that you're taking control. And this is both your internal and your external communications. And then work in shifts. So don't keep your people on duty for 36 hours straight during a major crisis, because that's when mistakes happen. Rather have them hand off the baton, and then just be transparent. So those are the main things that I thought were important to note for riots. And I agree that it isn't just happening in big cities. It's happening everywhere. So I think it is important to discuss that with your team. And in terms of preparing your company, how I suggest and what we do is we train the executives and the managers, and then those managers then take the training and they replicate it in their different departments. And then obviously anytime there's a new hire that comes on, they need to be trained as well. I would suggest quarterly looking at your plan and incorporating any new things that have come. And look around also at your competitors. What have they been in the news for? What kinds of mistakes have they made? And then learn from that. The second part of that question was, to what extent is the employer liable for a safe workplace in the case of unexpected violence? That's a great question. So just so you know, as a business owner, you are held responsible for anticipating what could happen, and you are required to prepare for it. So if you do not have something called an injury, illness, and prevention plan in place, you need to get one. We review and update our clients regularly. If you have any kind of accident or workplace violence, OSHA is going to come knocking on your door. They need to be notified within 8 hours, and the first thing they're going to ask for is a copy of your IIPP. The second question I have here is, how do you handle a consumer crisis, quality control issues? So what I noted here was, most importantly, is document your process of quality control and be prepared to communicate with your stakeholders as quickly as possible. If it's something that has to do with food, which we deal with a lot here with agriculture, my suggestion, my strong recommendation is do a recall on your own. Don't wait. The trust that you're building is way more valuable than any losses you're going to incur as a result of the crisis. So be transparent and very proactive in the recovery. The more you can do to own up, and then, your messaging should be, here's what happened, here's why it happened, and here's what we're doing to make sure it's never going to happen again. People are very forgiving. They just want to hear from you, and they want you to own the mistake and then be informed of how you're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay, then the next one was somebody committed suicide in the workplace. And then here I referenced the murder-suicide that I managed in the pediatrician's office that happened in the middle of the day. Domestic violence is common. These types of things are common. My suggestion, strong recommendation for everybody, but specifically dealing with this question, is to have, we train our clients, we do violence and workplace prevention, and then active shooter training. And we practice, and we teach people to look for signs of, something that's percolating. And again, domestic violence, I think 40% of the deaths that happen on the workplace, murders that happen, is a result of domestic violence. So we actually train for the signs, what to look for. And something as simple as, if you have a business that is open to the public, looking them in the eye when they walk in and making sure that they see you. They see you and that they know that you're aware of them. That is something that surprisingly is very, very effective in keeping the bad guys away and having them choose somewhere else to go. You can also have a TV screen up that has a camera on them where they see themselves up on the TV. Even if it's not recording, even if it's not, true surveillance, it deters big time. I have several different videos that you can go online and watch, and a download actually that goes over what we talked about today. If you go to crisisblueprint.com, and there's an active shooter video, there's violence in the workplace prevention video, and then a free download for you. Okay, the next thing was we work in the financial services industry, and their concern, two things were the cyber attack and then market downturn. So cyber attack, we talked about that a little bit earlier. I strongly recommend, if you're in any kind of business where you're dealing with sensitive data, that you employ artificial intelligence and you use one of the services that we work with our clients. And so the things are being monitored real time, and if there's any kind of an uptick, the breach is, it's caught and stopped immediately. And then you're going to want to communicate. Don't do what Target did. So I don't know how many of you know the Target situation, but Target found out there was a data breach 2 weeks before Christmas, and they had to decide whether or not to go public with it. They didn't know the extent of the breach. They just knew that there was a breach. So like the majority of their sales for the year come from like that period, the 2 weeks before Christmas. So they had to make a choice, and unfortunately they chose to keep it secret. And a week later, they found out that in fact, a breach had been just as severe as they had feared. And now they had to go public, only now they're going public and saying, oh, yeah, by the way, we've known for a week. So they got in bad it because they not only were dealing with the Attorney General for California, but the Attorney General for every state in the entire country. And it ended up costing them a ton of money, not to mention the loss of trust from their clients. So talk first and talk truthfully, and the trust that you're going to gain from your customers is worth so much more than whatever, financial loss. And there's interruption of business insurance, and there's things that can be done to help mitigate those costs as well. So, and then financial market downturn, what I would do is I would create, this is more of a PR, but, part of crisis management is reputation building. So what I would do is I would create a series of talks on the subject and become a industry expert on how do you prepare for a market downturn, what are, some good investing advice. And it's stuff that you're doing anyways already, but if you take it public and you sort of partner with your Chamber of Commerce and do a lunch and learn type thing, find a restaurant that will sponsor it, that wants to have the audience of, 30 business owners or whatever, and just host a little lunch and learn and talk about, here's what happened in the past, here's the people that did well, and here's examples of businesses or whatever organizations that didn't do well. And so these are the things that we want to make sure that you do to prepare yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that any of your tactics change. It's just that you're telling the story. You can write an opinion piece and submit it to your local newspaper about market downturn and tie it back to your brand. Those are the kinds of things that you can do to prepare your customer base for market downturn and also create a value add that will grow your business. The next thing was, somebody mentioned that as a small business, any one thing can cause a crisis if not addressed. That's so true. And I never really understood why the small SBA was so important until I became the owner of a small business, and I realized what a disadvantage we are at compared to the big business. So you're absolutely right. Having a crisis plan is just as important, if not more important, for a small business. The next one was change in management, dealing with change in management. I just had a client that had this happen, and it was very interesting. It's easy for us to see clearly because we're objective, but it's amazing the messaging that was being created that they wanted to give out to let people know that there had been a management change, and it was one of the principals that was leaving not on good terms. And then interestingly enough, it was sort of like his job. This lady had started the company, and it had grown, and it was like 6 different locations. And the board of directors fired her, and and she was the face of the brand. So they had to figure out how to do that. And one of the most important things that we wrestled with is they wanted to sort of get their side of the story in. And it didn't matter. Like, their side of the story, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that you're notifying that this person is no longer there. You're going to wish them the very best. You want to be the first to notify and say as little as possible because you don't want to breach any HR employment laws. You cite that if you need to, but you just, 24-hour news cycle, you just stick with your main messaging. Your managers are going to be met with individually, verbally. You have that, again, avoid in writing. You definitely want your attorney and your crisis manager involved, and your crisis manager would be whoever you choose from your company or if you outsource to take that role. But definitely you make the announcement that they're not there, wish them the very best, and then cite who will be the point of contact going forward for whatever dealings that person had in the business. Next was illegal activity of a former employee. So for this, I think it's, again, what happened and what safeguards did you put in place to make sure it didn't happen again. The public's very forgiving. If you're an accounting firm and one of your main officers as an accountant is embezzling money, that's problematic. But people understand that sometimes even good people do bad things. So you just want to, again, be transparent. This is what happened. This is how it was allowed to happen, and these are the safeguards we put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. Behavioral health. So I have a client that also deals with behavioral health, actually autism. And what I can say to you is you need a crisis management plan and you need to get one. I cannot say that strongly enough. You need to have a full crisis management plan. And by that, what I mean is not just your crisis communication plan, but you literally need to have an analysis where we come out and we walk through your business and determine where your risks are and do a risk assessment and then figure out how are we going to mitigate those risks. And, I mean, at a minimum, you need to do that because when something happens, which it will, you can show, in terms of for legal defense, you can show that you've done that, you did that kind of preparation because you specifically are going to be held to a whole different standard. And I would imagine that I don't think it's happened yet, but anybody dealing with behavioral health is going to be mandated to go through violence and workplace prevention, active shooter training, and have a full crisis response plan in place. Hospitals are already having to do that now, so it's coming. So you're going to have to do it one way or another. I would just go ahead and do it now. Proper way to respond when the media is trying to, I'm not sure if this is, but I think is negatively wanting to write a negative story about you. So a couple things. You have your holding statement that you can release. But if a reporter calls and you answer the phone, you're not obviously prepared. If something bad has happened and you're not ready to talk. So you're just going to say this. You're going to say, well, hi, so-and-so. Thank you so much for calling. I really want to talk to you. I'm just walking into a meeting. Can I, get your contact information and then call you back? And they're going to say, well, whatever. They'll respond. You say, okay, so, what, if you don't know, what media outlet are you with? Then you're going to ask, what's the story? Even though you think you know what the story is, have them tell you what the story is, and then ask them what the deadline is. And then you say, okay, as soon as I'm done with this, I'll call you back. Then you hang up your phone, you call your crisis manager, you get together what your talking points are going to be, and then the appropriate time you call back. So sometimes if it's like one of our clients is Jelly Belly, and they had an accidental death at a family reunion, and so it had nothing to do with Jelly Belly, but it still was tied to the owner of Jelly Belly. So the media was trying to link it with the brand, and so we were the corporate spokespersons for the family, and we took it away from the Jelly Belly brand. But in that case, there was, Inside Edition, that TV show, they were parked out in front of the daughter of the owner's house, waiting, trying to get an interview with her. So they can be pretty aggressive. So in that case, you're not going to want to just do one reporter at a time. You're going to want to issue a holding statement out to the media so that it stalls and buys you some time. But if you accidentally answer a call before you're ready, that's how you handle it. But just make sure you do call them back because, you need to be the one to tell your story. Don't let them. And reporters are going to tell the story, so you might as well have it be around what you want the story to be. And then let me see if there were any new ones that came in. Everything else? No, I think that's it. That's it. That's all I had in terms of submitted questions. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, that's Holly, this is an incredible, not only amount of information, but I think that you presented it in such a clear and concise way. I will admit that coming into this, I didn't know a whole lot about exactly what a crisis communications plan was, so it's really helpful to have an idea of the various components, what people can do immediately on their own, and then where also there may need to be some outside consultation or some outside assistance. And
I know it's a lot of information. Yeah. But I will tell you that if you do go to the blueprint.com, crisisblueprint.com, you can download a guide that goes over what we talked about today. So, and it is a lot, but, it's doable, and don't look at it as an all or nothing thing. Any little thing you do to help prepare yourself is fabulous. So start with one thing, right? Like if you don't have your email addresses of your customers and your employees and your vendors and suppliers, start that. If you don't have an email marketing system, you can go to MailChimp.com and create one. It's free. It costs you nothing. You just put all of your email addresses in there, and then you can communicate one time, boom, done. Have somebody in your office take the time to call or look up the email addresses and phone numbers for your main TV stations, your main radio stations, and your newspaper and business journal. And boom, there's your media database for local. And you would do that for each region you operate in. It's just little things like that. If you don't have an injury illness prevention plan, just Google it. Google what it is online, and it'll show you. You can download a template for it, and you can create it for your business, and you need to have that because OSHA is going to ask for it if you have something bad happen. Again, it seems overwhelming, but really you just Google it, download the template, boom, make it your own, and put it somewhere where everybody knows where it is, and then you document that in your communications plan. So I just encourage you, don't look at it as all or nothing. Take one step today and take another step tomorrow, and then just continue to work on it, continue to look for ways to both capitalize on good crises and prepare for the bad ones. Watch what your competitors are doing. And Google yourself. Watch. Make sure that you know what's being talked about online. Make sure you have alerts set for your own personal name, for your business name. And then you can also do the same thing for your main competitors, so you can watch and pay attention to what's going on. But yeah,
that's wonderful.
Just more, you can feel free to reach out if you guys have any more questions. I hope this was helpful. It's a lot of information, but it's very important, and it's important, like I said too, to tell your story. These are all tools that you can use to tell your business story.
Awesome. And I just had a thought too, Holly. The Alumni Network, our online community, could be not only a great place to continue this discussion, but maybe a good place for practice. So, if you are kind of fine-tuning some messaging or, the holding statement or anything like that, it's closed to alumni, emerging leaders, InterEyes alumni. And so it could be a good place to get feedback from Holly and even from other people. So, think of that as a resource and test some things out, and it might actually be helpful for other folks, too, to see that kind of engagement. And I am out for the rest of the week, but next week I'll send these links that Holly suggested to the folks on the call today, share her contact information, and I just like Holly said, I continue to think about it, continue to ask questions, keep the conversation going, because I think this has been a really valuable call. And thank you so much for your time, Holly.
Oh, you bet. I hope it was helpful. And we can help people from it. We have clients all over the country, clients that we've never even met before in person. So feel free to reach out. We're here, and we can certainly continue it on the chat area that you talked about online.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck,
Appreciate
everybody. Keep me posted on how it's going.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.